Hello, angels, baddies, and bitches. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Amber a Killer. Thank you so much for supporting the YouTube so far. I'm really grateful for all the comments and the engagement and people messaging me on Instagram telling me that my videos have resonated with them in some way. I hope everyone is doing well. It's late December at the time of recording. I just turned 31 2 days ago. I had a really cute little party, and then I feel very grateful at how much love people have shown me and all the things that my friends have done for me in the last few days. And I thought that this would be a good time to do a 30 things I learned before 30. So obviously I turned 31, so I've had a year of being 30, and I'm very open to the idea of my 30s just being a huge learning curve for me. And anyone that's listened to my podcast, Friend Crush with Amber a Killer, or followed me on Instagram and TikTok in the last few years probably has more context for my life journey thus far. And to premise this video, I want to say that, I don't want my content to be, you have to be like me. Do these things and you'll be like me. My through line and my thesis has always been, how can I be more myself and how can I encourage other people to do that? Because I don't feel that there is just one way to live, but I feel that everyone is unique in their experience of life and what they're here born to do. And it doesn't have to be this big, lofty, game-changing thing. I think that literally just being authentic and being kind and generous is a radical concept, a radical way to live in and of itself, especially in this day and age, and especially in the Western world. I grew up in Australia and was heavily influenced by American and British culture. So that kind of culture is so individualistic, and so much of the conversation around empowerment and representation is very self-serving. And I feel like it's hard for people to really sustain authenticity or a sense of empowerment around things that are communicated in such a self-serving way. It feels like, or it seems like, you're making progress, but you're kind of just going around in circles. And especially in the last video I did where I talk about confidence and being unbothered, one of the most important parts of confidence, I believe, is being able to encourage other people being confident as well, to support other people in their authenticity. It's not about me being confident at the expense of everybody else in a way that makes everybody else insecure. My confidence comes from my ability to encourage others and for us to support each other and to see mutual progress and growth between us, So this list is by no means exhaustive. I have learned so much in the last decade. I don't even remember what it was like to be in my early 20s. So for anyone that's watching this that is in their early 20s, just know that life can get better if you let it, and if you work really hard on being able to understand yourself and being able to really listen to what it is that you want and what is calling you, and to have self-trust. It can feel really overwhelming because at that age, that's when you sort of start to leave the nest per se, and you're no longer in a structured environment the way you are in school. So people start to kind of branch off in different directions, and people who you thought you had so much in common with, you realize, oh, you actually have totally different ideas of reality and what you want to do and where you want to go in life. And then what do I want to do with my life? Some people are much clearer on who they are and where they want to go at a younger age, and for other people that takes time and discovery. And I feel like I'm definitely one of those people. At first I was raw in who I was, and then all these layers of conditioning were added on top of it, and then I had to peel back all those layers again. And now I feel much more comfortable in who I am, and I'm much more confident in the journey that I'm taking. And that has come from embracing all the different insecurities and the challenges that have come with that process. And now at this age, I see the effect that not embracing that process has had on other people my age. You can tell when someone avoided the pre-30 crisis or tried to party their way out of the pre-30 crisis rather than really sitting with it and doing the inner work necessary to confront yourself and to be real with who you are, your life decisions and what kind of decisions you want to make moving forward. So yeah, I don't want this video to be too long, but I feel like it might be. And I obviously can't go into detail on every point. So if there's any particular topics that stand out that you want more information on or you want more perspective on, let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to like schedule a video in future. And yeah, I feel like, you know, there's a lot of content out there already that's very focused on objective or surface level markers of success, like how to get into a relationship, how to make this much money by this age, how to land this type of job, how to look this way. And yes, there's value in that kind of content, but I want to emphasize again that being happy and being successful is not something that other people can necessarily define for you. That's going to look different for every person. I'm sure there are people that look at where I'm at in life and are like, she's flopping. And there are other people who look at my life and are very envious of it. So at the end of the day, all that matters is how I feel about my life, and I feel good about it. So I'm not mad, you know? But before, I used to let other people's judgments dictate how I felt about myself. And what I've learned over time is that the most important opinion is your opinion of you, because the longest relationship you have in your life is going to be your relationship with yourself. And I didn't include this in the list, but it just came to me right now. So I'm just going to add that in. The longest relationship you have in your life is going to be the one that you have with yourself. So make sure that you learn to become your best friend. Make sure that you learn to self-regulate, that you learn to speak to yourself the way that you would speak to a friend, okay? And it took me a really long time to undo negative self-talk, and I think that that needs to be another video. But that's what I spent a lot of my 20s trying to understand and trying to get a handle on. Let's get into it. So number one is an authentic life is better than a conventional one. I think for me, especially growing up in a very white environment in Australia, there were a lot of expectations that were thrust onto me and a lot of stereotypes that people wanted to assume or felt that I should embody because I was an Asian girl. And there was a very narrow definition of what Asian women could or couldn't do or were not capable of. And I always felt like I just want to be able to do what I want to do, not why can't I be like everybody else, okay? So as I've gotten older, I've learned that an authentic life is better than a conventional one. And this isn't to invalidate anyone that lives a conventional life, because that could be authentic to them. But for people that are pursuing something that is conventional, even though it is inauthentic to them, I'm just letting you know that in order for you to really feel content and embodied in who you are going to have to figure out what's actually authentic to you. And the fallacy of the diminishing returns fallacy, this idea that you've already put in this much time and effort, so why should you give up now? That can really stifle you. But at the same time, there are situations where you need to invest in something that maybe doesn't feel authentic, which will then lead you to something that is more authentic. There's something to be said about having certain skills and fulfilling certain requirements, especially when you're not really sure what you want to do. So like for me, I graduated from law school and I got into law school when I was 17. I chose and made the choice to apply for law school when I was 16. I didn't know what I wanted to do and I was really depressed during my degree, but ultimately that degree has given me skills that I probably wouldn't have taken the time to learn if I wasn't at law school. And it's a privilege to have an education, and it's a privilege to have certification that allows me to apply for visas, work visas, open companies, etc. So each person is going to be different in their journey, but at the end of the day, remember that living an authentic life is better and more fulfilling than living a conventional one. Just being able to satisfy other people's expectations of you is not enough if it's not also your own expectation, if it's not also what you really want for yourself too. And that evolves and changes over time, but just keep that in the back of your mind, okay? Number 2 is embrace your curiosity and your interests. Don't worry about what other people have to say about the things that you like, as long as you like it and it's not harming anyone by you participating in it, okay? People being offended or confused is not harm. So for example, like I've always been really into art, into music, into fashion, And that's not like a radical thing, but when I was younger, I think my taste was kind of different to the people around me, and they would make fun of me or people would make certain comments. And there were times when I would sort of dilute what I was really into in order to just kind of fit in, but I would always end up returning to whatever my own chaotic and unhinged taste was, and as a result have been able to connect to opportunities and to people that appreciate and share the same interests as I do. And being able to naturally want to learn about something and to feel progress in that is one of the most radical forms of self-empowerment you can participate in. Okay, it's more than just, oh, you see someone that looks like you that's doing what you're doing. Actually being able to represent yourself is in and of itself radical. You don't have to wait for a woman, Asian person, black person, whatever person to say or do the things that you want to do. You can actually do them first, and as a result, you expand the definition of what it means to be someone that has certain identity tags, okay? And you recognize that you can do whatever you want. You're here to represent yourself, not represent some group that you are superficially associated with. Like, another thing is pole dance. I always talk about this on my podcast, and having a non-negotiable hobby. I was always curious about pole dance, but just didn't have the opportunity to get into it until I think around 2020. And being able to get into dance, strengthen my body, my flexibility, getting in tune with my sexuality in that kind of environment, and also community with other women, has been so empowering, so life-changing. And people thought it was weird at first. People still think it's weird, but I don't care because I enjoy it, and I'm not harming anyone by participating in a hobby that I genuinely enjoy. And I've gotten so many people into it as well who have had similar positive effects from participating in that kind of practice or interest or hobby. So embrace your curiosity. That's what makes you unique. That's what gives you a point of view that can add value and contribute value to your relationships, to your work, to your experiences, etc. Number 3 is The 4 Agreements. This is a book by, I want to say, Don Miguel Ruiz. Pardon me if I mess up the pronunciation, but this book is really important because it gives you kind of like 4 core things to just keep in mind as you're living your life. Those things are: don't take things personally, don't make assumptions, be true to your word, and always do your best. I encourage you to read the book. I can do a more detailed video just on these 4 agreements, but I think reading that book, reminding yourself of the ideas and principles in that book is going to be really helpful in your 20s and onward. Okay, so I totally brain farted and missed number 4. Number 4 is: do not get into political debates with other people until you've spent time learning about human psychology, because a lot of people, me included, were or are using political language to further our own unaddressed trauma or agenda. And this isn't to say that your personal experience shouldn't influence your politics and doesn't influence your politics, because it obviously does. Like, the intersection between class, gender, race, nationality, ethnicity, etc., all impact how you view politics, your education, etc. But I think that you are going to waste so much time getting into politically charged debates with people, thinking that you're making progress on the issue that you're discussing, when in fact you're just wasting your time and energy and going around in circles. And for me, my end goal is always self-empowerment and the empowerment of others. If having this conversation is not facilitating either of those things, or cannot be used to facilitate those things, then I'm not going to continue it. Okay, and I've wasted probably years of my life talking to people who fundamentally didn't want to see my point of view. They just want to argue in circles, or they just want to wear you down and have you default and agree with them. And 9 times out of 10, when you're dealing with people like that, it's easier to just be like, you know what, I totally agree with you, and move on and do something else more important and productive with your time. Because a lot of people are just closed-minded and they're just looking for their bias to be confirmed. They're not actually looking to learn and develop and evolve their point of view and have a real conversation. They just want to have a debate. And yeah, so I highly recommend spending time learning about human psychology and understanding your own psychology, what motivates your political views, what motivates you to feel like you need to debate and change people's minds when they're coming from a place of stubbornness and a lack of tact or a lack of nuance. Ask yourself why you feel like you need to prove yourself to those kinds of people if ultimately you don't really want anything to do with them. If you do want something to do with them, maybe reconsider where your priorities are when it comes to your relationships and who you spend your time with. Anyway, that was number 4. Number 5, learn to emotionally regulate. Whether this requires a practice like meditation, journaling, deep breathing, yoga, whatever it is, learn to emotionally regulate, okay? Your emotions and how you feel are your responsibility. They might be triggered by other people, but you are the only person that can truly make yourself feel better and give yourself the permission to feel better. Do not wait for other people to hold themselves accountable or to apologize to you in order for you to feel like your emotions are valid or in order for you to feel like you can move on from something. Do not wait for other people to validate you in order for you to feel validated in who you are. You might get it later on. You might get it at the time that you need it, and that's great. But to constantly put something as personal and internal as emotional regulation in the hands of other people, not clever. And a lot of people don't know how to emotionally regulate, and they'll make it your problem. And when you know how to emotionally regulate, you can protect yourself from people like that, and you can protect yourself from getting into unnecessary conflicts or into toxic relationships with people who are only seeking to extract from you, not actually contribute to your life. So learning to emotionally regulate is really important. Identify your emotions as you experience them. Give yourself space to process. Let people know that you might need space to process if required, but embark on that journey, okay? Number 6 is learn to embrace the light and dark parts of yourself and of the human experience generally. Remember that after every flop comes a slay. I want to make another video on flopping and slaying. Slayconomics, as I call it, the philosophy of slaying. We do live in a world, in a universe that's based on contrast. There is no singular experience. Everything has a light and dark. The concept, the principle of yin and yang, within every dark there is light, within every light there is dark. And recognizing that everything is changing all the time, whether you like it or not, whether you're aware of it or not, or whether you embrace it or not. So if you can just accept that things are going to change and that there is up and down and there are cycles, there are seasons to life, it will just make life a lot easier because you're not going to resent any low points, and you'll also be able to appreciate high points so much more. You know, live in the moment and recognize that after every flop comes a slay. But if you just think you're going to be stuck in flop forever, that's what you'll be in without even realizing, okay? And sometimes you leave space and you realize that, oh, life has gotten so much better than I thought it could because I believed in the possibility of slaying. And now I'm like, was I in a flop era without even realizing? Like, that's when you're like, damn, I've reached like another level of self-determination. When you think back on a time in your life where you thought you were slaying and you realize that that was actually kind of a flop in comparison to where you are now. That is the trajectory that your 20s can provide you, okay? That was number 6. Number 7, disagreement is okay. Dismissal is not. As someone that, you know, grew up in white suburbia, was very mouthy and has always been opinionated, but also somehow being kind of like shy and reserved. I think I'm opinionated when I'm on my own channels, but when I'm in the presence of other people, I'm not seeking to start arguments, okay? But if someone starts an argument, I'm always happy to finish it. And that's also a skill you need to learn if you want to be able to stand up for yourself. But people will mask their dismissal of you as a disagreement and then kind of try to gaslight you and make you seem like you're crazy for not being okay with being dismissed, okay? So it is okay for us to disagree and have different viewpoints on something. I believe that racism exists and is present in this situation we're discussing. You believe that racism doesn't exist and is not present in what we're discussing. We can agree to disagree, okay? We have different viewpoints and we can respect that, but I'm not going to say to you, you're an idiot because you don't believe that racism exists, and you can't tell me that I'm an idiot because I believe that it does exist, okay? And there is, sometimes the line is so fine that you can't really see it, but don't surround yourself with people that are not capable of holding two conflicting truths in their mind at one time, okay? And you also need to learn to do that for yourself, and that's what being able to embrace the light and dark parts of yourself and of the human experience entails, okay? Nothing is black and white. Most things are just shades of gray, and something that might seem really important and extreme to you could be mild to somebody else, and you need to recognize that, okay? You need to be able to accept that and hold space for it. It doesn't mean you go out of your way to be around people that you constantly disagree with, but you need to be okay with that possibility at some point, okay? Because you also never know who you might end up agreeing with, even though at first you were like adamantly against them. And I'm a perfect example of that, okay? Because a lot of people disagree with me when I have things to say at certain points in time, and it's not long after that they come back around and tell me that I was right all along. And even then, it's like being right is overrated because it can alienate you from so many people, because it's not really about being right. It's just about being able to express the truth as you understand it. And that's actually more threatening to most people than just telling them what they want to hear or being able to confirm their pre-existing bias. So disagreement is fine, normal and acceptable. Dismissal is not. You need to learn to fully accept yourself and the parts that you try to dismiss so that you can hold space for other people. But if someone can't hold that space for you when you've done your best to do that for them, you're free to walk away, in my opinion. Which brings me to the next point. Other people's problems with you is not your problem. And this is in the context of you're living your life, doing your thing, and someone is telling you that you're not doing it correctly, or that you're somehow harming them, even though you don't know them, you have no connection to them, and all they're doing is projecting their own insecurities onto you. Their problem with you is not your problem. You can take feedback, okay, and reflect and ask yourself, is this true? You know, you're going to get feedback at all stages of your life, and especially if you seek to be semi-public facing in what you do, there's always going to be feedback, and it's not always going to be helpful, but being open to it is important. And, you know, taking stock internally to decide whether or not it's valuable to you is important too. But ultimately, like, people attacking you out of nowhere, it's not about you, it's about them, okay? If I'm going into someone else's house, bashing their door down, and trying to rob them, okay, that's one thing. But if I'm walking past your house and you run out of it to tell me that there's something wrong with me, that's not really my problem, it's your problem. You know what I mean? And that's what a lot of interactions in life can be like. Like, I don't even know who you are, and you're telling me that I'm somehow like wrong for just living my life the way that I want to. Whatever, okay? Other people's problem with you is not your problem. Iconic Azalea Banks clip. I literally, like, that video lives rent-free in my mind and has lived rent-free in my mind ever since I saw it when I was in my early 20s, I think.
Your problems with me are not my problems. Those are your problems. Be mad and stay mad.
Your new life will cost you your old one. If you are someone who seeks to evolve, seeks to embrace their authentic self, seeks to live their best life, your new life is going to cost your old one. You want to believe that you can bring everyone along with you, you can bring all the things along with you too, but you need to clear out space in order for new things to come in, and that is on a mental, spiritual, physical, material realm, okay? There are some relationships that aren't going to be able to carry through into the next stage of your life. There's certain things that can't carry through into the next stage of your life, certain habits, certain thought patterns, and when you can accept that, it will be much easier to move through that. It doesn't mean that it's not painful, disappointing, overwhelming, but that is just part of the process. There's nothing wrong with you because you weren't able to bring your best friend for the last 5 years into the next 5 years of your life, okay? Sometimes that's just not feasible, but sometimes it is, and you can be grateful for that. But don't feel like there's something wrong with you because what was compatible at one stage in your life is no longer compatible in this next stage that you're moving into, okay? You know, I always say in my podcast, like, sometimes you just haven't been alive long enough to really understand the cycles of life and to understand the different seasons that you go through and to understand how something can evolve in ways that you could never have predicted for, okay, for better or worse. So your new life will cost you your old one. Which brings me to the next point. Nothing is as certain as it seems. Leave room for the unexpected when it comes to everything in your life, when it comes to healing, when it comes to your relationships, your life path, your identity, your career, your friendships, your aesthetic, your interests, your religion, your spirituality, your values, everything. I think that when you're younger, you want to feel like there is certainty. You know exactly who you are, you know exactly what you're about, and you can kind of get into this like cognitive dissonance where you're doubling down on something even though reality is showing you information that counters this thing that you seem so adamant about. And that can be like really confronting to the ego. And sometimes there is this desire to just double down on that thing because you've developed a mental and identity attachment to it, and it occurs at your own expense. So I think that for me, as I kind of got out of my early 20s, I started to just leave space in my mind for that which I could not predict, and for things to get better in a way that I might not be able to even mentally understand or comprehend. And I think the first thing for this, the first major thing for this, was healing trauma around a lot of the racism that I experienced in my hometown in Australia. I felt so defined by these traumatic experiences that I had when I was growing up and in my early 20s. And I was constantly running from my hometown and the experiences that I had there. And in the pandemic, anyone that followed me during that period, I was forced to be in my hometown with no escape. Like the borders were closed and I just had to be there, and I had to sit with all these experiences that I had, and I had to untangle the mental maze, mental knots that I had around my identity, and being able to be like, you know what, you could actually not feel so defined by this. This could be something that you've overcome, something that you've learned from, an experience that will inform you in a way that can empower other people, rather than something that just makes you feel like stuck in your body. And I think that was a huge turning point in my mentality and my approach to life, realizing that there are things that I just can't predict for, and being okay with having that space in my mind and in my experience has allowed for so many different amazing connections and experiences and opportunities in ways that previously I just felt like I had to know exactly how everything was going to go. I had to have a plan, and if I didn't execute the plan accordingly, there was something wrong with me. If I wasn't able to achieve the things that I thought that I had to achieve in order to be considered valid or whatever, you know, I was going to be a failure. But leaving that space, and in the last video I talk about the 80-20 rule, if I can control 80% or have 80% awareness of what's going on within me and around me, and then leave 20% space for the things that I can't predict for, I leave space for being pleasantly surprised, and for better or worse. Okay, some things don't go the way that you expect, even though you just take a chance on it, and other things can go well in ways that you can't expect either. So don't take it personally, just navigate and adjust as you go. 11, talent is worthless without discipline. I think when you're younger, and especially this like pedestaling of the prodigy sort of idea, prodigy archetype, there's this idea that you just have to have raw talent and that's going to get you where you want. Especially because I work in the creative industry, I feel like, yeah, sometimes there's this romanticization for people who are just naturally born to do certain things, but there are a lot of skills that can be learnt and that can unlock a potential, and it's more about your dedication to learning and the practice that shows results, not just the raw talent that you have. Talent needs to be harnessed, and it needs to be harnessed with some kind of practice. For example, for me with content creating, I never thought that I was going to be good at this, or that this would be something that I would be interested in doing when I got older. But I think just like keeping at it and being okay with making content that isn't that engaging to content that is engaging, and, you know, finding new ways to organize ideas has been enjoyable in and of itself, and has created a skill set for me that I didn't know that I had without actually making the physical attempt at it. And I think that people can become way too defined with what they think they are or are not talented in, even if they have an interest in the thing that they don't think they're talented in. You know what I mean? Like, that's why you need to follow your interest and your curiosity. You could harness a skill that becomes a talent or becomes perceived as a talent if you leave that 20% of your mind open to the possibility of something different. For me, with dancing and with pole dance, I did not identify as a physically active person. When I was younger, I did not identify as someone that was coordinated. My friends danced when I was in high school, but I didn't dance. And now my friends don't dance and I dance. So that's a skill that I've harnessed and a potential that I unlocked through practice, not one that I believed that I inherently had. And whether I inherently had it or not isn't important anymore, because I just care about enjoying and learning. You know what I mean? So I even just watched interviews recently of Angelina Jolie talking about how she learned how to sing, and she remembers someone saying to her, like, in passing, how, well, she doesn't have a singing voice, in the past, so she just assumed that she couldn't sing, but now she's singing opera, like she's playing one of the best opera singers in the world in a film, and like learning to sing and train for that. So we're all human. We all have these like blind spots, or we all have these little hang-ups, but don't feel like other people can define you. And remember that talent is worthless without discipline. Next point, beauty is worthless without brains. The idea that once you're beautiful, all your problems will be solved and you'll be validated and you'll be confident is a farce, okay? That's just people who are entitled to looking at nice things, but are not actually willing to pay the price that comes with having access to real beauty. And for me, I've always believed that beauty comes from within. I can find beauty in anything. I can romanticize anything if I want to. Like, I have an artist mind. But I do believe that in society, there is such thing as pretty privilege. There is value in the pursuit of living a quote unquote beautiful life, one that you enjoy and one that you love and one that you embody, one that is aesthetically pleasing to you as you define it, one that, if you are in certain spaces where there is a certain beauty standard or there are certain requirements, you know how to comply to, but in a way that doesn't infringe upon your own enjoyment of life, or one that doesn't deplete you in service of other people's pleasure or meeting other people's needs, okay? So I've seen a lot of really hot girls get played by really ugly men. Beauty in and of itself was not enough for other people to respect them, okay? The skills to appreciate beauty and the skills to respect someone, to treat someone with respect, they're two different skill sets, okay? So the assumption that someone that can appreciate your beauty can also respect you is extremely naive, and there is no point, in my opinion, to pursue superficial beauty and to adhere to certain beauty standards or to comply with other people's expectations of beauty if you are not also learning how to have boundaries, if you're not also learning how to respect yourself and how to walk away from shitty behavior. Because learning how to be beautiful on a superficial level does not teach you those things, okay? So remember that you're going to have to learn another skill set if you want to actually benefit from pretty privilege. If you want to benefit from being beautiful, being considered pretty, you also need to develop another skill set that teaches you how to do that, okay? Because just being cute is not enough. Next thing, empathy is worthless without boundaries, okay? There is the romanticization of being empathetic, being a people pleaser, because you want to be able to make sure everyone else is good, and it's so hard for you because you're such a good person. But there are extremes to every trait, and there are diminishing returns, okay? It's important to be empathetic because you're a person, but you don't want to be so empathetic to other people that now you're draining your energy in a way that is not empathetic to yourself and your own needs, okay? Do not meet other people's needs at the expense of your own. Your empathy is worthless without boundaries. People will not appreciate what you give them if it's going beyond what's reasonable for you in retrospect, okay? You've already given it and you can't get it back. There are very few people in this world that will look at you dead in the eye and say, you are doing too much for me. You need to chill the fuck out, okay? Someone might say that to you and you probably won't even listen because you're so deep in your own like identification with a people-pleasing mindset, and you don't even know which way is up or down in terms of like what your boundaries are and what like prioritizing yourself actually looks like. So remember that empathy is worthless without boundaries. You need to be able to say no. You need to know and develop an awareness of your own energy levels and what you have to give and what you might need to reserve for yourself. Be okay with saying no to people and disappointing someone in the moment if it means that you're preserving yourself. And this doesn't mean there aren't situations where you are giving a little more, okay? But you do that with awareness, and you do that with an acceptance of the consequences, and you take personal responsibility for it. Because once you've given it away, you can't get it back. That's just kind of how it goes. So it's really, really important that you learn to have boundaries around your empathy. And the people that are entitled to your empathy and to your energy and try to guilt you or shame you for not giving them what they want, for not being okay with making them feel good at your expense, they're letting you know in advance that they're not the right people for you, okay? And I've been in so many situations where it's so subtle, the way that they're like, oh my God, I'm going to be so sad that you can't come to this event. Like, why are you doing me so dirty, blah, blah, blah. Like, that is such a subtle emotional manipulation that people play on you. It's like, okay, your inability to be alone at an event is not my problem, okay? I can be alone at an event. If you're not there, it's disappointing, but it's okay. I'll see you again another time. But when you see someone or experience someone manipulating you into meeting their needs at the expense of your own, you could have been clear, like, I'm really tired today, I'm not going to make it. And they're like, oh, like, why don't you just take a nap? Like, well, miss me with that, okay? If I'm being really serious on how I can't do something, and you're supposed to be my friend, and we're supposed to mutually respect each other, and now you're making it seem like I have to go against my own best interest in order to meet yours, especially on a consistent level, no go. Number 14, when people tell you who they are, believe them, or at least make a mental note, okay? Just because you see a red flag or what might seem like a red flag at first doesn't mean it's an immediate no and I've got to cut you out straight away. You know, I'm open to giving people the benefit of the doubt. I'm empathetic, but I also have boundaries, okay? If I collect so many red flags that it becomes a red blanket, okay, maybe I need to read the writing on the wall and take a step back, because I have other relationships in my life where there hasn't been this abundance of red flags and we're doing just fine. So I know that if there's an abundance of red flags here, it's probably not going to go that way, okay? It's going to go a different direction, and probably one that I'm not going to like, or that's going to result in a mess that maybe I don't want to clean up. I prefer not to. So when you're getting to know someone and they tell you how they treat their exes, or how them and their previous friends have broken up, those are all indicators of who someone is, you know, and that's the same for me. I think about the friend breakups that I've been in, and I tell people when I'm friends with them, if I have a conflict with a person that goes to the uncrossable line, my own internal uncrossable line, I'm out forever. It is very, very rare that I will re-entertain someone after I feel like I've been betrayed, or after I feel like a boundary has been crossed, or when I feel like I've been put into a position to pander to what someone wants me to accept in them, but it's actually a dismissal of who I am, okay? People know that. So why are you surprised when you fuck up and I'm not here anymore, okay? I'm telling you who I am when I tell you that story. And they're telling you who they are when they tell you about this back and forth that they've been going on in their previous relationships, or the conflicts that they're always having with their managers and their superiors at work, or the jealousy that they experience with other relationships in their life, okay? They're telling you who they are. It's not about deciding who is a good or a bad person. It's just, am I compatible with this? Yes or no, okay? Someone who's always telling you other people's business, they're telling your business to other people too. You are not an exception. You are most likely the rule. So when people tell you who they are, believe them, or at least make a note. I'm okay to enjoy the fun parts of a relationship where I'm seeing a few red flags until I get to a point where I'm like, okay, I've made a lot of notes and it's a little too many notes for me to keep track of in order for me to still maintain healthy boundaries here, so I'm going to take a step back. So you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater to begin with, but like I said, make a note so that you can refer back when the next red flag comes up, because it's very rare that it's just like one huge red flag and it's an absolute no. Sometimes it's a lot of little ones, you know, collected over a period of time that are woven together to create the big red blanket. Yeah, it's okay to have space to entertain new things, new connections, but usually at the end of the day, your intuition is correct if you have practices that allow you to like connect with yourself and you're emotionally regulating and etc. Halfway, number 15, connection/chemistry, attraction cannot trump incompatibility and poor communication. But compatibility and good communication can foster connection and chemistry. We definitely romanticize the butterflies in the stomach, love at first sight. Not saying that that doesn't exist, but it's not the only way that you can meet someone and develop a connection. And I mean this in work, in friendship, in romance, okay? Because there are so many situations where I've met someone and I can't get a read on them. I'm like, why am I even here? Why are we even speaking? And then it's ended up being a very fruitful relationship, collaboration, friendship. And then other people that I've gotten really excited about meeting felt like, oh my God, we're going to be able to do so much together. And then it's just been a huge car crash, a crash out, total mess, whatever. No real compatibility, and like it's just some surface level hee hee ha ha, and then, you know. So just remember that. Just because you're attracted to someone does not mean that that's fated, does not mean that it's going to mean anything, does not mean that it's going to be good for you, okay? Because especially when you haven't really unlearned or become aware of your traumas, you don't realize the way that you're subconsciously just trying to repeat patterns from your childhood that you're trying to repair, but are actually toxic. And that's what the chemistry is, okay? And then there's a lack of compatibility, there's a lack of communication. That is the action part that's showing you maybe this isn't going to work out, okay? Maybe we should finish this at part 1, and then I'm going to come back for part 2. So those are the first 15 things that I learned in my 20s for you to reflect on. And then, I think the next video next week is going to be part 2. Let me know your thoughts on this so far. And if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, or topics that you want me to do like specific videos on to give you more of a breakdown. Because I feel like a lot of self-empowerment content and the process of it has to do with language and communication of ideas that allows it to actually stick in your brain. You can hear the same thing worded in 100 different ways, but only one of those versions sticks with you. So I'm just here to provide an alternative for people who have maybe already looked at like 99 versions and I'm the 100th version, and you're like, oh, okay, now it makes sense, you know, because I feel like that's always what I've been searching for as well, trying to find my own language to communicate how, why, what is possible for me when it comes to living my best life, living authentically, existing authentically, and being able to support other people in that pursuit too. So that was part 1. Like, follow, subscribe, comment, follow me on Instagram, listen to my podcast, French Crush with Amber Akilla, and love you lots. Drink lots of water. Tell your friends and family you love them. Go be a better person. Sending love and slay your way. Stay hot and having fun from me and my share t-shirt. Speak soon. Love you. Bye.